Good evening and welcome to the Oro Sports Show's Raider Wrap-Up Show. I am Matt Harrelson, alongside with me Dion Cranford, and I know it's not the one-year anniversary of this specific show, but it is the one-year anniversary week, we'll call it, since we're splitting the shows up, of Ross. So, of course, we want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in across all of the Richmond Observer's platforms. So let's jump right into it, do what we do here, talk about all things Richmond Raider sports. Of course, later on, we're also going to go down a level and cover all Richmond sports. But in the meantime, let's start with boys basketball. So their first game over the last, 7 days was they defeated Purnell Swift 78-46. So let's start right there.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, Purnell Swift's only won one conference game this year, and that was against Richmond to start conference play. So this was kind of a good revenge game here. Plus, it was just kind of a little uplifting moment for the Raiders because they knew they should have never lost that first one to begin with. So to kind of get this one back and to do it in such a blowout fashion, I mean, they won by 32 points against a team that just beat them a few weeks ago. So that just shows you how much they've improved over the past few weeks. But I mean, Nige Strobin, he was the difference maker. 27 points in that game. He just has come alive this last cycle of the conference play since about the Lumberton game. He's just been hot. I mean, I don't know what happened, but we're glad to see it happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, Roderick Newman chipping in 10, and Caleb Hood had 9 points as well. Now, that was obviously a good win. That was a revenge win, if you will. Mm-hmm. But we got to talk about the big game from, Tuesday night? And that would be defeating number 1, Pinecrest. And it wasn't close.
No, it was not. It was not. This game started out pretty much in Richmond's favor from the very beginning. The Raiders took, I believe, around a 14-point lead in the first quarter. Pinecrest kind of mounted a little bit of a comeback to make it interesting. I think it was 10 after the first quarter, but we're going to take a look at a few of these first quarter plays here as the game got started. But Richmond goes on to win this one 72-46. It was actually the team's largest margin of victory over the Patriots in the 2000s. That's as far back as my research was able to go in time for this show. So I'm not sure about going back before then, but still a huge margin of victory to beat such a good program. It's also the worst margin of defeat for Pinecrest. It's falling 83-54 to Hoke County back in February 2013. So Richmond handed Pinecrest their worst loss in 6 years.
Yeah.
So just impressive for the Raiders there. And as you look at how they did it here, Raiders did a very good job, especially from behind the arc. Big 3-point plays, especially at critical moments in the game. It was like every time Pinecrest would edge back and get a basket or two put together, Raiders would come back and fight their way back in, especially from behind the arc. Now I will say this: Russell and I were actually standing up against the wall against that baseline that you're actually seeing there on the screen. And there was, I was counting, and you see that dunk there. That was a big moment in the game as well. It kind of lit the fans up there. But we were standing behind that baseline there, and in the third quarter alone, I counted 8 times where Richmond was able to either get a basket or some free throws after missing a shot. So second chance, third chance points were huge in this game, and they just dominated the boards on both sides. And you'll probably see some of those rebounds and some of these highlights here. So big game for the Raiders on Tuesday.
One thing I've noticed just from this first set of highlights, and unfortunately I wasn't able to make it like you guys were, but I've noticed that Richmond was able to collapse the defense and kick it out if need be. And, of course, if you've got shooters out there on the outside that can make those shots, that's how you get a lot of points. The other thing, as you just mentioned, I've noticed when they were missing shots, they were getting a lot of rebounds, especially on the offensive side. And then you have to make free throws, right?
Oh, yeah. And, Richmond doing much better from the free throw line. And a matter of fact, I would say in the past few games, that's been one of the huge difference makers. Because Nige Stroman, Xavier Pettigrew, especially them two guys there, and then, of course, Jarvis Tillman, all do a great job at getting in the paint and actually drawing a lot of fouls and getting to the free throw line. So when they can do that and actually make those free throws, convert those free throws to distance themselves from their opponents, they're going to be a dangerous team to. And this is the third quarter here. Here's some of the highlights where we were actually standing down there by that baseline. And there you go right there, kicking it out for the 3-point shot. They did that quite a few times there in the third quarter. And you'll like I said, you'll probably see some of these rebounds. Kellen Hood there, I believe that was Kellen at least. I couldn't quite make it out, but he had a big game he ended up with 9 points. So he actually outshot his brother. Don't say nothing, but he actually outshot his brother. Caleb ends up with 8 there, and there's Caleb right there making that back. 2 of his 8 points there. So, and there's big old Xavier Pettigrew there. He had an excellent game. Definitely a big presence in the paint. Definitely a big presence in terms of getting some of those rebounds I talked about. He was just a man above. He was just a man above among boys under that net. I mean, any shot. Here's that. Yeah, watch this. Full court, boom, right in the net. Unfortunately, it was just after the buzzer, so it didn't count. But it was still a lot of fun to watch, and the fans went crazy. And it was just a huge night. And as you can see in the background, Richmond already with a big lead at that point.
Yeah. Is there any chance that was actually good?
No, unfortunately not. It wasn't even that close. He didn't get that ball out too well after the buzzer sounded. But, Richmond with a 20-point lead. And at one point here in the fourth quarter, Richmond will go up by 32 and clear the benches. And that is just insane to think that they could do that against Pinecrest.
Yeah.
I mean, there were guys on that court that probably never thought they would see a whole lot of playing time against the Patriots.
Absolutely. And speaking of the Patriots, so this was Richmond's 72 points was the second most scored in regulation against Pinecrest this season. Looking at your notes here, 71st actually scored 74 against them, but then lost in OT. Obviously, one of the takeaways here that I'm seeing, I know these are the highlights, but Richmond was draining a lot of shots. You think that's something that Coach Pettigrew's been working with them on, is focusing on getting the open man and just basically just focusing on the art of shooting?
Absolutely, and they've definitely got a lot better at shooting, but they're getting really, really good at sharing the ball. A lot of assists, like you said, finding guys outside. I mean, there was a lot of strategy. You could watch their wheels turning while they had the ball, and they're looking around. A lot of looking one way, passing the other. I mean, they just kept Pinecrest just really confused, especially defensively. It was amazing to watch them play offense, and I don't think too many teams could have beat them last night or Tuesday night. They were just outstanding.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could beat them the way they were playing. It kind of reminds me, not that I'm comparing them to the Warriors, but that style of play is kind of similar to what we saw from Richmond, isn't it? Where, like I said, there's a lot of passing. You try to find the open man, a lot of transition baskets. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say. And another thing is they're making good judgments with their shots. I noticed that a lot of times when they were shooting at times where they had Nige or Xavier or somebody right under the net. So if it does miss, they've got the advantage under the paint. I mean, you could actually tell that they were timing those shots to where they had the right guys under the net. So just great play, great job by Coach Pettigrew to teach those guys that kind of chemistry because they played extremely well.
Yes, they did. So, of course, the final score there is 72-46. So now that they've picked up that victory, where does the Raider team stand as we currently sit?
Well, they're currently 10-9, so they're above 500 for the first time this season, which after starting 0-4 is a huge accomplishment in itself, especially with the wins that they've accumulated. They're averaging 73 points per game in the 5-game SAC run that they're on right now. And they only averaged 50.25 points per game in those first 4 conference games that they lost. So it just shows you how much they've improved, especially in their shooting and scoring.
Yeah.
And then next up will be Jack Britt. And Jack Britt won the first meeting 42-37. So you look at that, they scored 37 points in that first meeting with Jack Britt. I don't see that happening this time. Win or lose, I don't see that happening this time. So, but Jack Britt's their fortunes have kind of reversed. They're on a 2-3. They've gone 2-3 in their last 5 games. And they're coming off a 51-46 loss to Scotland. So if Richmond beats Britt, now think about this. If Richmond beats Britt, they'll be in 3rd place.
Yeah.
And possibly 2nd if they get help in one of the other games. So they went from the bottom, 0-4 in 8th place, and now they've got a chance to move up into 3rd.
Yeah. Very impressive, absolutely. Of course, Pinecrest still sitting at the top at 6-3, 71st right there, 6-3 as well. But to think about where they've come here in the last 5 games, astronomical. So of course, congratulations to them.
And just looking at the conference standings for a moment, you got Pinecrest 71st with 6 wins, Lumberton, Jack Britt, Richmond all with 5. So you think of how top heavy this conference is right now. And I mean, just about anybody can win it. In the top 4, I'm pretty sure the top 4 are guaranteed playoff spots. So at the very least, Richmond needs to leapfrog, one of those teams ahead of them and get up in there.
And if you're somebody that believes in momentum in sports, you got to think Richmond's going to be able to come away with a W. The way that it seems like Jack Britt's kind of going down and Richmond's trending up. Hopefully that's the case.
Well, I mean, and after wins against Lumberton 71st and now Pinecrest, Richmond may be sitting in 5th place with a 5-4 record, but they're definitely the team to beat right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're definitely the best team at the moment.
All right. So let's move on to the girls' side, and they're also winning some ball games. Now they defeated Purnell Sweat as well, 37-22. Of course, Alexis Sweeney chipping in 12 points, but unfortunately, not the same results when it came to Pinecrest.
No, but I mean, and this isn't to put down our girls or anything, but that's not a big surprise. I mean, Pinecrest is like 17-2 right now. That's just a really good team. That was going to be a tough game for them to win. But, you know, Jakara Covington and Talia Wall each had 6 points, and that was your leading scorers. And when your leading scorer has 6, you know, it just shows that you're kind of struggling. Pinecrest played a great game defensively. This was kind of a bad loss in terms of the size of the loss. Now, I don't think losing to Pinecrest was necessarily a bad loss in itself, but just the margin of victory kind of got to hurt their feelings a little bit. But like Coach Mosley said after the game, he said they just started off flat. He said if they would have played the whole game the way they did in the second half, it would have been a much different result. And, you know, sometimes you just come out like that, and you when you do that against a really good opponent, it's gonna make the scoreboard look kind of rough.
Yeah, and I'm again not trying to put our girls down or anything, but 58 points, that's pretty good for a girls basketball team, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is, and I mean, Pinecrest once again they've just proven that they're a really good girls program. Matter of fact, their only loss this season wasn't that long ago to Jack Britt, and that's Richmond's next opponent. So. That's also kind of scary that the team that beat gave Pinecrest their only conference loss is our next opponent. But Richmond did beat Jack Britt the first time. So I actually put a note in here. I think the magic number is 4. They've got 5 games left. If they can win 4 of them, I'm pretty sure that guarantees them a playoff spot at this point. 3 may do it with some help, and it's still possible they may get in with 3. But they definitely 4 would definitely get them in.
Yeah, so they're 9-9 overall, 5-4 in the SAC. And as you mentioned, 3 may do it, and perhaps they can get 2 of those from a 2-7 Hope team and a 1-7 Scotland team that's still on the schedule. So
yeah, and Hoke will immediately follow the Jack Britt game. So I mean, should they beat Jack Britt, it's a good possibility they'll get in because they'll have Hoke and Scotland who are both struggling.
And we were talking about how the boys conference seems to be top heavy. You can kind of make the case for the girls side too, right? Because you've got Pinecrest with 8, Jack Britt and Lumberton and 71st with 6, and then Richmond right behind them with 5.
Yeah, it seems like to be a battle for second place. I think Pinecrest will take it. They're 8-1 right now, but yeah, like you said, Jack Britt, Lumberton, 71st each with 6, Richmond with 5. I mean, you know, any one of them could take the second place spot. I like Richmond's chances of getting into the playoffs, but they are going to have at least one quality win in there to do it.
And of course, you know, we've talked to Teddy Mosley here a few times, and one of the things they need to work on is, you know, not creating or not turning the ball over rather, and you know, just playing as well as they know they can. So hopefully we'll see that over their next few games. All right, so let's move on to wrestling. And, of course, Austin Gallops doing his thing still in the 152-pound class.
Yeah, we actually talked about him a little bit last week. I think you talked him up because he had actually – I think he had finished second or third in that last meet. But he steps up and wins the 152-pound weight class, and that's at the like I said, that's at the conference championship meet. So huge accomplishment there for him.
Absolutely.
And then we had a couple of second-place finishers. Joseph Nicholson in the 113-pound class, and then the one I always mess up his name.
Andres Sanchez.
There you go. Also finished second in the 106-pound class, and I apologize about that. I always mess up his name. I'm sorry. And Caden Walker finished third, and the Raiders as a team finished 4th overall.
So now that the SAC championship meet is over, are most of these guys done? Is anybody moving on to regionals?
I'm sure a few of these guys will move on to regionals. That's just not set yet, so we don't really know. But I can't imagine Austin and at least Joseph not moving on. So
I completely agree. And of course, if you want to find all that out, you can do it right here, of course, or also on the Richmond Observer because we have all that stuff for you for free. Let's move on to bowling. And boys, girls, all of them. I haven't looked at the scores, but they had to do better than I did Monday night. So let's start with the boys. Richmond beat 71st 4-1. So let's start right there because I know you've tried to explain to me the scoring system. I still don't get it, though.
Well, like I said before, it's the Baker's format. So they use 5 bowlers, and then they just bowl in order. So the first bowler bowls first frame, second bowler bowls second frame, and so forth. Then once they get to the 5th frame, they just start the cycle all over again for 6 through 10. So usually your scores aren't ridiculously high in that kind of format. Right. So that's why when you look at these scores, you go, 125. That's not that uncommon in this type of thing. But Richmond did beat 71st 4-1. They won the first game 125-108. The second game 140-124. The third game they dropped 147-135, and then the fourth game they had 193
almost hit
to 107, and that was a little bit better than you bowled, right?
A little bit. I don't want to talk about it.
So the 193 was actually a season high for the boys team in a single game. So
Nice.
So good to end the regular season on that one. And then of course the Raider boys also beat Hoke at that match 4-1 as well. They won game 1 184-114. They dropped game 2, 123-108. They won game 3, 135-133. And then won game 4, 137-124. And that was actually, and then of course they won the total pins 564-494. That was actually kind of a big one for Richmond because it was the second time that the Raiders and Hoke actually played each other. The first time Hoke won. But Hoke and Richmond are kind of both balancing in the middle of the conference standings there. And they're it's going to be interesting to see where they finish up. But the Raiders really needed that one, so it was a big day for the Raider boys to get those 2 victories over 71st and Hoke.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the girls' side of the lane. Of course, they were in action as well, playing 71st and Hoke. So what happened there with the girls' team?
Well, the girls actually they beat Hoke, but they fell to 71st in the first match. They lost 71st 4 games to 1. They dropped the first one 108-114, the second one 101-110, and the third one 110-121. But they actually won the fourth game 122-104. And because all those games were so close, that big win in the fourth game actually almost gave them total pins.
It did, yeah.
They ended up losing by 8,
Yeah.
449-441. So that was probably not so much as a big loss as it was just 2 teams that are kind of about in the same area, kind of competing each other. As you could tell by the scores, it was very close. And then, of course, the Lady Raiders beat Hoke 5-0. I'm not going to run down all those scores because it was so lopsided, but they won 548-417 in total pins, and that 548 was actually a season high for the Lady Raiders in a series. So congratulations to the boys and the girls for hitting a season mark there in the last match.
Absolutely. We'll have to put them on the RO team next time instead of me. So, by the way, before we move on here and finish up with the bowling teams, this is still part of the regular season. Are they almost wrapping up?
They'll do some individual stuff first,
Okay.
but then they have regionals and state and everything as well. So we'll kind of see where it goes from here. So
All right, very cool. And then as I kind of teased in the first of the show, this is the Raider wrap-up. But here at the RO, we like to give you what's going on down at the middle school level. So let's hit a little bit of that real quick.
Well, tonight is actually the regular season finale for the basketball team. So I just kind of wanted to bring them up a little bit. In the girls' side of things, you have Rockingham, who's 8-0, going into tonight. Hamlet, who's 6-2, and Ellerby, who's 5-3. And all 3 of those are likely to get into the playoffs with those records. And interestingly enough, Hamlet and Ellerby's 1 game behind Hamlet in the girls' bracket, or in the girls' side of things. Hamlet and Ellerby are playing each other tonight. So that's actually a big position round for them in terms of who may get to have a home game or who has a tougher first-round opponent, that kind of thing. So big game in Ellerby today as the Hamlet girls and the Ellerby girls are playing. And then on the boys' side of thing, probably the only 2 that are going to get in are Rockingham and Hamlet. They're both with 5-3 records. Of course, Rockingham has a little bit of advantage because they beat Hamlet. So Hamlet, I just kind of put my notes there likely in. The problem is you actually have several schools in there with similar records, so I think they're in, but they probably do need to beat Ellerby to make sure.
Well, I'll say what I said last week, and that was go Rockets. So.
Yep. And the
I
Rockets.
just say that because I know you're a Hamlet.
The Rockets definitely dominated the conference this year in basketball, so congratulations.
Yeah, of course, congratulations to them. So, and congratulations to us as well because we've made it a year. Somehow we got through it.
100 episodes. We're catching up with The Simpsons.
We'll be there.
Oh, we'll be there.
We'll be there. In what, 32 years?
Yeah,
Is how
something
long
like
we've been
that,
going
yeah.
on? All right, so that's going to do it for the Raider wrap-up. Of course, we really appreciate everybody tuning in from now all the way back to this time last year and hopefully now until this time next year. So for Dion Cranford, I am Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here next Thursday for the Oro Sports Show's Raider wrap-up.